All right. Welcome, Wellness Warriors, to another episode of the Q&A Files. I'm Trisha Jamison. And as always, I'm here with my two incredible co-hosts, Dr. Jeff Jamison, our board-certified family physician, and Tony Overbay, our licensed marriage and family therapist.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
So today's episode is a special one because it is dedicated to someone who reminded me just how much kindness still exists in the world.
Well, this gets a little awkward then. Is this about me? I'm kidding.
How did you know?
Oh, wait, sorry. I'll let you. Sorry, you do. No, pretend that I didn't know it. Pretend I didn't figure it out. Go ahead.
But as we know, life moves so fast and it's so easy to get caught up in our own stresses and our own responsibilities. But every once in a while, something happens that completely shifts our perspective. Something so simple, yet so very powerful that it makes us stop and appreciate the goodness around us. So this story is about a moment of generosity that took me completely by surprise. And it left me feeling completely overwhelmed, and I just had so much gratitude, and ultimately reminded me of the deep impact of small acts of kindness that we can all have. But before I go there, I want to ask the two of you, so kind of replacing celebrations. I want
Jonathan.
you.
If you can't think of one, Tony, you can do a celebration.
I'll hold it once again.
But I'm saving you today. But I would like to know from the two of you, have you experienced someone sharing some sort of, an act of kindness to you, or have you shown an act of kindness to someone else and that you may, you either paid it forward, something like that, the whole paid it forward effect?
Well, I have one since I know Tony doesn't. So
go ahead.
Yeah, just kidding. So anyway, I have a broad range of patients from very wealthy and very, they have lots of resources to those that have very little or almost nothing. And one of the gentlemen that has a fair amount of resources came to see me one day just before Christmas. And he said, as we are wrapping up our moment together, he says, okay. And he pulls out his wallet and he pulls out $100 bill. And he says, I'm sure you have somebody in your practice that needs some extra help this. And he said, he took the $100 bill and he handed it to me. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And he says, I want you to give this to somebody that you feel needs it more than I do. And so I went, well, that's a great idea. Okay, I'll take care of that. Well, it didn't take very long, and a very sweet woman that had two small children and had just had has been going through a really tough time. Her husband was basically a deadbeat, sitting on the couch watching video games or playing video games and not doing any work. So she's doing work, childcare, and, everything. And so I gave that $100 to her, and she just looked up at me and the tears just started falling out of her eyes. And I just thought, Christmas is a good time to remember to do kind things for people, even if they don't deserve it. And maybe because they don't deserve it, they need to do it more. But, oh my gosh, it just felt great. And then later on, I was able to report back to the gentleman that gave the $100, and he was happy about that as well. So it was a really fun thing that he thought of, that I thought, wow, what a kind thing. And to give it to somebody that, sees a broad range of people, so I could give it to somebody that really needed it.
I love that story.
It was fun.
That's nice.
Okay, Tony, do you have?
Well, I'm doing the thing in my mind where I don't have exactly what you're saying, but then I've stopped myself because I keep thinking of these other examples when Dr. Jeff was talking about that, or I hear pay it forward, and I don't think this is exactly the same, but it's wild to me to see, and I've never talked to other therapists about this. I don't know if this is a common thing, but where I will have someone from time to time just say that they have a friend that really needs help and they know that they can't afford it. And, they will cover the therapy charges for somebody. And I've got a situation like that right now with someone. It's a really interesting situation. And, I've been blessed with a wait list, and we get to more or less pick and choose the clients I really think I can help. I want to put it that way. But then someone that I will work with, and this happened a couple of times where they will have someone close to them going through something very hard who they know could benefit from good therapy, but they can't afford it. And then they'll just say, hey, can I send somebody your way? And if there's any way you can just let them know to not worry about the cost. And so I've got one of those going on right now. And the more I'm understanding the situation of the person, it's even deeper than the person that is paying for the therapy knew. And so it just ends up looking like one of those, tender mercies from God kind of thing, where it's just really fascinating. So I really like that pay it forward concept. And can I talk about immaturity for a second?
Sure.
It's so funny when we don't sometimes just feel okay to just take ownership of something, then we sometimes will create a narrative. Maybe it's only me, but I now know where this origin story is. I've read enough John Grisham books to know, the legal thrillers where I'll hear about the attorneys that will have a pro bono client. And so then I think I made this leap at one point and I thought, well, maybe therapists do that too. And then I would tell myself that they do. And then I would say, well, every therapist takes one or two pro bono clients. I don't know if that's the case, but this one client has since passed, and I have her. She would just pay me in little knickknacks. Like I've got this little fidget spinner, a Batman fidget spinner that I keep by my desk often. She used to pay me in chocolate, but I would just, I knew she couldn't afford. It is. I still have bags around. I mean, she would pay me in bags of Dove dark chocolate. They're expired now, which is really funny. And every now and again, when I'm desperate, I'll open one, and sure enough, it has turned white. And I've sure enough Googled, is that okay? But I just this concept of that paying it forward, or so there's a part of me that just has this soft spot for somebody that I want to help everybody, and unfortunately sometimes I think bad therapy can be a challenge if somebody doesn't get good therapy, and so I know that's a me thinking I can save the world vibe as well. But I really appreciate being able to help somebody that can't, and I love when clients are just saying like kind of like what Dr. Jeff's saying. Hey, can you help somebody with this that because I don't. So I've never had somebody to say, here's $1,000 now, just give somebody free therapy. I don't know how that would really work. Maybe that wouldn't be so good, but I don't know. I like this concept.
Hi. Well, thank you, both of you. So today's episode is dedicated to Jen, a stranger who became a friend because she chose to show kindness. So I'm excited to share this story. So I want you to picture this moment with me. I had just been in Utah for a few weeks, and it's been a special time for us because we had 2 grandchildren. One was born on just the day before Thanksgiving, happened to be our 37th wedding anniversary, and that's our little Adelaide. And then we had a grandson born on Christmas Day, and his name is Owen. And so I had been, Jeff and I both, and with Braden, went down to Utah to spend Christmas, and then I stayed longer to help with Owen and our son and daughter-in-law. And so I had been quite busy and soaking up all these times with, both of these families and their newborns. And just love being a grandma. I'm called Nanny, and Jeff is called Papa. But this day, I had the privilege to spend some time with our daughter, Capri, just the 2 of us. And we were enjoying a very simple lunch, reconnecting, and making the very most out of our time together. And as we stood in line and we placed our order, just enough for the 2 of us to enjoy, but we also got 2 extra meals that day because we planned to take it home and share it with others. There came this incredible moment that completely caught me off guard. And when I went to pay, I reached for my wallet, and when the person behind the counter suddenly pushed the tray of food toward me and said, "It's taken care of." And I just stood there and I said, "What?" I asked, completely confused. The host said, "Well, just repeated, it's taken care of." And I looked at them, still not understanding, but I said, "But I haven't paid yet." And he said, with the smallest of smiles, he clarified again, "Somebody already paid for you. They paid for your meal." And I was stunned. I literally could not process what was happening. Seriously? Who? I asked. And I just glanced around, suddenly desperate to find the person responsible for this act of kindness. And I didn't see anyone immediately, and I think that even made it all the more mysterious. And then the funny part, because in moments like these, our brains don't always know what to do. I turned to the waiter who had just walked by me and I jokingly said, "I'll give you $5 if you tell me who did it."
That's clever. Okay, I've never thought about bribing somebody for that.
I
Okay,
know, right?
like where you're
And
going.
Did
I know.
his arm hurt when you were twisting it behind his back?
That's right.
But of course, I didn't even have $5 with me because I don't carry cash with me anymore. But it was one of those moments where I felt this deep need to know who had done something so generous for us. He hesitated and he looked all around and said, "Well, I think they must have left." But I could tell he was totally lying. He wasn't going to give up that secret, but honestly, I loved that even more. So still my curiosity wouldn't let go, and Capri and I tried to piece it together. And then I remembered something. There was a woman who had smiled at Capri earlier when we were in line, and she had taken the time to say hello to her. And something about that just stuck out to me. So I spotted her sitting at a table with with a few other women. And I looked at Capri. We're sitting down at the time, and I said, "I'm going to go see if that's who they were and say thank you." She's like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yes." So I walked over, still in disbelief, and asked, "Did one of you very kind ladies purchase our meal?" And they all shook their head, but one of them hesitated. And she glanced at another woman who had just sat down, and that woman blushed. That's when I knew. I just went, "Oh my gosh," I said, smiling. I just said, "Thank you so much. That was so kind. That was the kindest thing ever." And she looked at me and she just smiled and said, "I was so excited to bring you both joy and make your day better." Ah, my mama and grandma heart just was overflowing. I said, "Oh my gosh, you did." And I told her I have 2 new grandbabies and I was just enjoying a lunch with my daughter, and this couldn't have been a better day. So Capri then asked the question that both of us that had on our minds, and that was, "Why did you do it?" And this was the most incredible answer. She said, "Because I can now." And that was it. And that one sentence held so much weight, "Because I can now." It made me wonder, what had she gone
Did,
through
did
for
she was she a person that had a bad relationship or something she just got out of?
Oh, I know, and so it just made me feel, what was what was different now that she could give in this way? Had she struggled financially before? Had she been in tough places where receiving kindness was something she once relied on? I don't know. I don't know her story. I didn't know her story then, but I do know. But I could feel the depth behind her words. And in that moment, we were just two human beings with our daughter, two mothers and a daughter connected by one simple act of generosity. So we exchanged numbers, and since then, I've had the pleasure of talking with Jen. I even took a picture with her, with Capri, and I learned that she's a single mom of 3 children. She works full time, and she has all the stressors and pressures of life. And despite all those challenges that came, she still chose to give. And it was just and then we even had 4 meals. I was so embarrassed. I'm just like, the one time we buy 2 extra meals. So it was not cheap and the food was delicious, but so, she just didn't buy our lunch. She gave us an experience. And that's what was so incredible. This gratitude, this connection, this inspiration that Capri and I will never forget. And so when you think about these kind of stories and you think about what transpires in you to want to pay it forward, we're going to talk about the science behind that today. But I also saw a story online about a young child who wanted to help families who had been affected and devastated by the wildfires in California. And this child's heart was so big, wanting to raise money to support those who had lost their homes. And I was just really touched by that. And so I contributed to his fund. And because that's how kindness works, it moves through us, spreading from one person to the next. So that's my story. But right now, we're going to dive a little deeper and we're going to go into what is it that creates that kind of the movement, the forward motion that allows us to act. So, kindness isn't just a nice idea. It's backed, like I said, by science. Acts of generosity, whether big or small, create a measurable impact on our brains, and it creates a measurable impact on our bodies as well, and even our overall life satisfaction. So, we're going to break this down. So, Tony,
Yeah.
I'd like you to share, what do you see in your office when you start to have people focus on serving, being kind to each other? How do they change in their therapy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm really not even just trying to insert any kind of comic relief, but I do want you to know, anyone that's listening, if you were, and I've confessed here, my mind is constantly running humor bits and jokes. But then I was also reflecting on why the jokes that were being run when you told that story. And, and while you were telling that, there was one version of me that I love these things where you hear a story and then you hear it from the other angle, and then let's say that, I don't know, let's say that you guys had gotten up and maybe somebody didn't realize their hair wasn't quite as it was. And there's a hilarious thing where all I have is these holy sweats and whatever. And all of a sudden she's thinking that you're destitute. She's buying it because of this, or, and all of a sudden here comes this lady and she's like, oh, why'd you buy my meal? And I just want to be kind. But deep inside, she's like, oh, because you obviously needed it. And she's made this judgment. I mean, so I had a funny narrative of that going. Then I also had a version of it where, 2 weeks from now, you see front page of the news and it's woman caught, in murder, inheritance plot. And so then it turns out, she had just offed her husband and got his inheritance. And so she was, to assuage her guilt, she's buying people their meals so she can feel better about it. So it's funny the way the brain works, because those are just happening in real time. And I'm trying to stay so present because this is such an amazing, tender story. So but anybody listening, because I will have people, somebody in my family very close to me, one of the things that she loves the most is she feels very safe to tell me that her brain will come up with these kind of narratives. And she's like, isn't that bad? And of course I'm saying, oh no, it just is. And anybody that is a Stephen King fan at all, there's a book he wrote a long time ago called On Writing, where it's a little bit of his autobiography. And then he talks literally about the writing process. And he said that in a creative writing class early in his youth, there was a picture of a young couple sitting by a pond, and that was the writing prompt. And he said people wrote all this stuff about marriage proposals or whatever. And he said he wrote about a creature coming out from the swamp and then devouring the couple. And, and it's just that was where his brain went. So anyway, I just think that was something I just had to get out there. But your question's so good because, man, when people are in their own head, that we default to this negative bias. So, and I really believe that that's because deep inside in our whatever prehistoric or what's it called? Evolutionary biological brain as a don't get killed device. I heard a story once that our ancestors, when they're looking across the plain and they see the alpaca or whatever, and if they can go kill it, then the whole village will eat and celebrate them. But if they see a lion anywhere in the peripheral, then they know, if I get this wrong one time, I never live again. So they're continually scanning for this threat, and then they've got this negativity bias of like, and I'll probably get killed if I try to get it. So I'll try another time. And so then it's like that our default, if we just let ourselves go, it's going to work its way to the negative. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with like rumination, because it'll cause a lot of anxiety, because then we can come up with all these different versions of that. What if that lion is out there too, and it will kill me? So I better just hunker down. And so I think service is one of the best ways to get outside of my head, to not think and ruminate, and to have to be and to serve, and what is somebody else's need and how can I meet that. And so part of it is just the where the emotional calories are being spent versus, instead of ruminating and worrying and anticipating and all that sort of thing, it's doing. And I'm a huge fan of, when in doubt, don't just sit there and ruminate or think, just do. And even then the brain will say, I don't know, do what? And then I think one of the easiest things to do is go serve, do something for someone else, even if it's feed your pet or take them on a walk or, anything. Go make your bed, serve, whatever, but just serve. And you are outside of your head. And then I start to see, that's where I believe that lifts the emotional baseline a little bit. And everything that we're doing that bumps the baseline up at some point will catch hold of the tools and we get the traction, and then it will snowball. So I think service can be one of the best things to do, just start to get you out of your head and to start to do things that will raise that baseline. I love that question.
Well, it's funny, when I was a teenager, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Good.
When I was a teenager, my and you're kind of going through that teenage retirement time where you just kind of want to chill and not do anything.
Yeah.
My dad would come in and say, Jeff, do something, even if it's wrong,
Oh,
do
that's funny.
something,
Yeah.
and so, he was frustrated with me because I was sitting around, which I can't even imagine myself doing anymore. But yeah, that was a saying my dad said, do something, even if it's wrong, do something. And that stuck with me, and I've used it myself,
Yeah.
as we often do with our parental sayings. We bring forward things from our parents.
Because I don't know
They're
what to
wrong.
do, right? And I don't know what to do is a story my brain is telling me, and if I hook to that story, then I don't have to do anything. Versus like, and even I don't want to do the wrong thing, another story. Or what if somebody gets mad at me, another story. Our brain has all of the yeah buts that will keep us just sitting there.
Stuck.
Because it doesn't care. It's a don't get killed device. You won't get killed if you're doing nothing. I mean, eventually you will. But
True.
another story.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for those thoughts, both of you. So I want to go back. So from a psychological perspective, kindness does something fascinating. It actually does make us happier. And many people assume that happiness leads to generosity, but research shows that the opposite is true. Giving doesn't just come from happiness, it creates happiness. So kindness activates key chemicals in the brain. So when we do something kind for someone else, our brain releases 3 main neurotransmitters. Jeff, do you want to talk about them? Do you know what those are?
You can guess what they are, but you're the one looking at the research, so go ahead and just say it.
Okay.
Always got to guess. There's got to be a dopamine in there.
Yeah, dopamine and
Oxytocin, cuddle hormone.
serotonin.
Is a bonding hormone, and it helps us feel connected to others. And this is why acts of kindness don't just make the recipient feel good, they make the giver feel deeply connected to humanity. Serotonin, the happiness hormone. So it boosts our mood, increases feelings of contentment, and even helps with sleep regulation and digestion. Dopamine, exactly right. The brain's reward chemical makes us feel a natural high. And this is the same neurotransmitter that makes people feel good when they achieve a goal, when they eat something delicious, or even when they exercise. So giving creates a cycle of positivity. So studies show that when we witness an act of kindness, we're more likely to do something kind ourselves. This is called the pay it forward effect. And I definitely felt that when, our meal was being paid for. In fact, we turned around to see if there was someone behind us that we could pay for, and there was no one to pay for their meal. But so when one person's generosity inspires another person to do something selfless, which then continues to spread. So I love this, and the helper's high is real. So have you ever done something nice for someone and you felt that rush of joy afterward? I think we've all felt that. We just kind of talked about that. And that's because the acts of kindness activate the brain's reward system. And it's the same neurological response we get when we experience something deeply satisfying. So, Jeff, what do you feel are the benefits that you can see in your practice when you have someone come in and they just have that personality and they just are giving and kind? And do you see a difference between that person and someone of an opposite nature?
Well, the thing that sticks out immediately is the person that's kind and giving and has all those other things going for them. I barely see them because they are not sick. They feel good. They come in once a year for their physical, and that's it. I mean, so these people generally are not very ill. And I find that,
Perfect.
yes. And so I find that people that have those giving natures, that are just these wonderful human beings, often have less illness. And they recognize also that happiness isn't a place. Happiness is a journey and is effort based. So when people work at being happy, those are the people that are really happy, versus people that just expect happiness to be thrust upon them.
Like it's a
And
right. Like it's
yes,
an
it should
inalienable
be
right.
right. It's my gift to myself is that I lay here and I'm now happy. Okay, no, happiness is something that you create, not something that is given.
That's
So,
awesome.
so anyway, that's what that. So the people that are in that category that you just said, I barely see them, and
Yeah.
it's great to see them, but I barely see them.
And, and research shows that acts of kindness reduce stress and anxiety. So, just like you mentioned, as we engage in kind behaviors, our brain shifts away from the fight or flight stress response and moves towards a more relaxed, connected state, just like you're talking about. Research has also shown that people who regularly engage in acts of kindness experience lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, leading to decreased anxiety and improved overall mood. So kindness also directly affects and benefits our heart health. So we just talked about oxytocin, the same bonding hormone.
Sure, you're gonna live forever, honey.
Ah, oh, nice, right?
Wow. And it also helps lower blood pressure and reduce inflammation in our cardiovascular system. So just, that makes sense that Jeff doesn't see these people. And this is why people who regularly practice generosity often have better heart health and a lower risk of hypertension. So it goes on to talk about immune function. So do you want to share anything that?
Can I throw something in here, Trisha? And maybe this might be a topic for another day, because I think just the population that you and I specifically work with a lot, I call them the pathologically kind, so kind to the point of where it's to their detriment, that it would be interesting to really take a look at, though, what, that relationship dynamic that where the person then can start to have these negative impacts to their their central nervous system, their body keeps the score, and where is it just is it a certain lifetime of giving with no reciprocity, or
Different.
Yeah,
literally that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like I think it's very different, but I think that
this is what I'm saying too. Yeah, it's like okay, there's generous, and then there's pathologically generous and kind.
well, because I
And
think the
so,
people,
and where is that? Go ahead.
because we'll have people listening, because we've got probably some of the women in the Facebook group, or the people that maybe hear the Waking Up to Narcissism podcast, that are picking up on and enjoying our podcast, this one, that are going to hear this, and this is the part that is, and I know it's why my stories in my mind, not the funny versions or the women that off her husband for the insurance version of the stories in my mind, but the ones of where I immediately am hearing the client that maybe was in my office yesterday, that's saying, man, I don't feel good when I'm giving all the time. So I guess I need to keep doing it even more. But it's like, well, you feel good about it when you're giving to those who, not that it's about the external validation, but who, I don't know, where they appreciate it, or maybe it's just not taken advantage of. And so I think, yeah, I'd love to, maybe we take this one on a different day and look at that version of it.
I'd like to address that first, and then we can. I think that could be a totally new episode for sure. But from my experience, because I feel like I have some of those characteristic traits. I feel like when I've had to be kind is different than when I want to be kind.
Well, that's good.
And I feel like it allows me, because you just talked about your body keeps the score, and you feel like you have to do something in order to keep
the peace.
Peace.
Yeah, that makes all this. That's good.
But when you have that desire to do something on your own, like this woman who she chose us out of a line of how many people? I don't know why. I don't know what caught her eye, but it was like she was excited. She was so that's the serotonin, that's the dopamine dump. That's all the good feelings that you want to have. But when you have to, and to create that calm, I feel like it's not creating a calm in you.
Right.
Definitely not. It's actually having.
Because you still might do it wrong, maybe. Like if I think I have to do it, then I'm trying to do it right, versus I'm just doing it. Because, and I think we can think of those examples of people that we've worked with where they do it, and then somebody is even saying, "Why'd you do that? I didn't ask you to do that." And now they're quitting, versus yeah, this is good.
Well, I think it creates a stress response, because
Totally.
there's so much more that's happening that you're trying to control someone else's mood.
Mm-hmm. Manage their anxiety, or
Yes, and whatever you need to do to shift and change that energy, that takes a lot out of you. And so the more that that happens, you're not going to get those feel good hormones and the, that mood boost or anything else. You're going to be like, oh, it's stressful.
Yeah.
And that a fun place to be.
Anybody listening, but yeah, it's like anybody listening, no, we will hit that on, because I still think there's even a way, and when we all talk about differentiation, that if I can put everything in it's a me thing in a good way category, I can still do that because it is the right thing to do, because I'm being my authentic self, and then it's outcome independent, even if the other person doesn't appreciate it or they tell you did it wrong, but you did it because it was the right way that you like to show up. So there are ways to work through that as well. I mean, that can be really difficult in these high conflict relationships, but no, this is good. But I don't want to derail though, because I love what you're saying, because the science is there about gratitude and happiness, and I love that.
But I think that was so imperative that you brought that up, because I think there's a huge group
Yeah.
of people that have to keep the calm,
Yeah.
have to do things different than having such a desire and want it from their heart.
So good. And what's funny is, and they're the people that a lot of times consume podcast material because they're trying to figure out how to show up better and how to fix relationships and what can I do better and different.
How can I change?
Yeah. Yeah.
That I totally get it. So that's so good. So I want to just kind of connect all this back to something that I've talked a lot about, and that is the green zone. So if you're new here, the green zone that I talk about a lot is the balanced state where we feel calm, kind of what Tony's talking about a little bit, and stay present and in control. And it's in this place where our nervous system is regulated and our brain, our CEO, our prefrontal cortex, is functioning optimally. So how does kindness play a role in expanding our green zone? So let's talk about it for a second. So kindness shifts our nervous system into a regulated state. And when we engage in an act of generosity, whether we're giving or we're receiving, our brain signals to our nervous system that we are safe. So I feel like what Tony was talking about, women don't feel safe, or it could be a man. They may not feel safe in that situation, and so they're not going to have the same experience of regulating their nervous system if they're not feeling safe and connected and feeling valued. Because definitely when you're feeling like you're having to manage someone else's emotions to keep the calm in the home, you're definitely not feeling valued or safe. So I feel like that this moves us out of hyper and that fight or flight mode, or hypo, the shutdown mode, and into a state of balance. And that's the more that you can give or serve or share on your own without feeling
When you want to.
when you want to, that's when you're gonna grow that green zone. So receiving kindness reminds us that we're not alone, and that connection is super important to us.
I love that distinction that you made though, between doing it because you want to versus doing it because you have to. And I think that's an amazing demarcation between good kindness and detrimental kindness or pathologic kindness. I just love that distinction. I never thought of that until just now.
Yeah. Well, and I think that when people are feeling isolated and disconnected, they're not in that, even though they're trying to walk that fine line, that's the line. So if you're having those feelings of disconnection and you're feeling isolated, but you're still trying to be kind to keep the peace, your nervous system is not being regulated. You're not expanding that green zone. And so, that's why we've got support systems in place. Tony's got this great group that he has put together, Waking Up to Narcissism.
Say at this point, we have a great group.
We have phenomenal. What was that?
Yeah, I said, there you go. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
You're playing a big role in that.
And it's been so great. I get to teach in there. Tony teaches in there. We're doing a book club right now, putting that together, and that's going to be really fun. But anyway, if you feel that you need some extra support and you're living with a emotionally immature person, please come join us, because it's pretty awesome. You won't believe the connections that you'll make. The women are phenomenal, and it is just
Trisha, Tony, where can that be found?
You have to reach out to us privately, because there's a real gatekeeping of the group because of the confidential means or so. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Had the wrong people tried to get in.
yeah. So reach out to Trisha, right? Is that in the show notes? Contact info. Yeah.
So that would be fantastic. So, but this is very, very important. And people struggle and face these feelings of isolation and the disconnectedness all the time. So, a simple act of kindness, like what Jen did for me and Capri, can completely shift a person's emotional state. And wow, talk about feeling valued and feeling. I just never have had that experience before, and it was just so overwhelming, and I just didn't even know what to do with it. I was like, "Can I pay you back? I don't even know. I mean, I can
Trying
afford."
to bribe a teenage kid, you were so desperate to know what to do, right? Yes.
It was so great. Yes. So, but giving kindness helps us feel a sense of purpose and control. And one of the biggest challenges in life is feeling powerless in the face of everything happening in the world. So when we're kind because we want to, that helps us feel in control. So when we choose to be generous, we reclaim a sense of agency in our lives and we shift from feeling helpless or feeling empowered because we're actively making the world a little better place. So now that we understand the incredible power of kindness from the psychological, physical, and emotional perspective, how do we put this into action? So, number one, what do you both think that what kind of actions do you think people can do?
So I'll throw this in there. I mentioned earlier the yeah buts. Anything that we're going to suggest, just watch as your brain thinks that sounds good, but and know that it's a normal repetitive process. And then you are a very, very unique person, and that is wonderful. That is wonderful. It really is.
But I
'Cause-
appreciate when you make me stop and think, and it's like,
yeah,
oh, yes, that is true. I mean, no, it's good sometimes. You're like, Trisha, come on.
well, because there's so many people, and I love it. Because then, and I guess I'm wired to work with the person that then will even hear a podcast. They'll think, okay, I'm changing my life. I'm
Right.
going to do this. Gives them the dopamine dump, and then like, okay, and then later in the afternoon when they're contemplating, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm like, you know what? I mean, I'm not going to do it today. But just like this morning, I confessed to you guys. I mean, it's the old proverbial, okay, I'm just going to have one more horrifically horrible breakfast for me, and then I'll stop because, and that's different this time, even though I've done that 900,000 times. Yeah, because we just these creatures of habit, and we go back to this default of I'll do it later. But I like the idea, but I don't have
Right.
time right now. Not really sure where to start. It's
I
not.
call this the energy of activation. And back to my organic chemistry days where it takes time to get from one place to another in your chemistry. You almost always have to add energy to that system in order to make it happen. And this is kind of what I feel about doing kind things. Sometimes it doesn't come naturally. For Trisha, it comes naturally. But when a person says, "Okay, I've got to do this in order to make myself feel better and make the system that I work in feel better," sometimes it takes extra effort, and that's the part where we stop. So making sure that you have the effort and doing something because you want to, that's where it really comes down to the important active part of this.
Yeah, awesome. Tony had to go. He has another client. So Jeff and I are going to finish up here. So thank you for that comment. I love that. That is, say that phrase again from what was that phrase? The something of activation.
Oh, the energy of activation.
I
Yeah,
love that.
that's a chemistry term that just means in order for a chemical reaction to happen, you have to put energy into it, usually in the form of heat. And so if you put the energy into a direction that you're trying to go, the energy into doing exercise, whatever good thing that you want to do, it usually is taking you from a place of chaos or a place of where you've got to put energy into the system in order to get order out of it. And so that is what you have to do, in my opinion, to be able to do anything good. And kindness is one of them.
Yeah. And you just need to start somewhere. And you don't have to, purchase somebody's lunch to create, you know, an act of kindness. It could be, complimenting a stranger. It could be sending a thoughtful text or holding the door open for someone and saying hello to them. But it does have a ripple effect. And the key is to make kindness a habit and to just start somewhere like Jeff was just sharing. So, and it's something that we want to do intentionally, just like we mentioned earlier, not something that we have to do because that changes everything. And then two is be open to receiving kindness and you don't want to resist it. So just like I shared, when we had our lunch paid for, I wanted to pay her back. I had that resistance of I didn't know how to accept it. And just like when somebody gives you a compliment and they're like, oh, you look so beautiful today, or I love your makeup, or I love your hair, and you always find a reason why that's
Oh,
not
this old thing.
right. And that's we all do that. But I'm actually trying to do better and accept the compliments that are given to me. And I'm still a work in progress, but I am doing better with that. But so I think that that's just really important to be open to receiving that kindness and not be resistant of that. And then share your stories. Share your stories of kindness because it's contagious when we talk about it. I think it's really fun. When you think about it, how did, is this something that, resonated with you, a story that somebody's sharing, and then all of a sudden you have this great desire to do something fun for someone else.
At the top of the show, when you're asking me about an act of kindness thing that I experienced, the first thing I thought was, well, I'm not going to share anything that I do because I don't want to make myself great or whatever. And so went right to where somebody else had showed an act of kindness. And I think that's part of it, is that we feel uncomfortable sharing the stories of when we have been kind or when we've done something good. And that's something that I think the more we do, the more other people can find that contagious and move forward in doing it themselves.
Well, and I think it's also in the way you share. So I think you can share in an arrogant way, and that's
So this is the only face I have.
no, but there's also ways that you can share, in a thoughtful, in a meaningful way, full of purpose. And I think that that's the difference. And you have so many fun stories that you get to participate in because of the kind acts that you participate in and are involved in. So I think that that's pretty awesome. And stop it. Okay, so how did this episode make you feel? Did it make you feel inspired, motivated, more hopeful? That's the power of sharing kindness. So, like we just talked about, when we tell stories about generosity, it spreads the desire for more kindness. So, if you experienced an act of kindness, talk about it like I did. Post about it, share it with your family and friends. Let's create a world where kindness isn't just something that happens randomly, it's something we actively cultivate. This is how we change the world, not through grand gestures or massive efforts, but through small, everyday moments where we choose to show up for each other, where we are reminded that people do matter, where we become a part of something bigger than ourselves. Kindness is free and it's so powerful. And it's something every single one of us has the ability to give. So, as we wrap up today's episode, ask yourself, what's one act of kindness I can do today? And then go do it. So, what's the lesson from today's episode? Kindness is powerful. It can shift a moment, a day, and even a life. And the best part, it doesn't have to be big or planned. It can be something as simple as buying someone's lunch, like we had, holding the door open, or just even making someone feel seen. Jen, if you're listening, thank you. Thank you for your generosity, your kindness, and your heart. You reminded me and Capri, and hopefully everyone listening today, that there's still so much good in the world. And to all of our listeners, this is your challenge for the week. Find a way to create a moment of kindness for someone else. You never know whose life you might touch, and the ripple effect could be bigger than you could ever imagine. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you feel inspired, leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. And it helps others find the podcast and join this community of Wellness Warriors. And of course, we love hearing from you again. If you have questions, a story, or a topic you'd love us to explore, please send us a question and email us at trishajamisoncoaching@gmail.com. Until next time, keep growing, keep questioning, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.